How did you deliver the news, or how did your team find out that the season was canceled, and what was their initial reaction?
Yeah, so we found out as a coaching staff, or I found out myself Monday about 4 o'clock, on a conference call with Ryan and kind of my bosses. And then from there, it was everything that we could do as an operations staff here in our building, as a coaching staff, to try to come up with every answer possible that those guys would need, okay? And whether it's, how's this going to affect my eligibility? Where are we going to be living? How are we going to have a chance to eat? Are we even staying or going? There's so many questions that a decision like this creates. So really it was from the time we found out, till 1 or 2 in the morning, really just trying to figure out answers to as many of the questions that they have. And to me, that's the hardest part, is you're going to go in there and you're going to give them some really bad news. And on top of that bad news, the answers aren't really there yet, and so it's going to be, a huge level of indecision for a lot of those kids. And so we found out Monday, spent an unbelievable amount of time at least trying to give them as many answers as we possibly could. And then Tuesday morning at 10 a.m., we had a team meeting, went in there, and really tried to, number one, be as genuine and authentic as you possibly can, and how bad this is going to hurt. And we understand that, and it's okay to be vulnerable, and it's okay to hurt. Because again, the majority of these kids have played football since they could run on 2 feet.
Yeah.
And for a lot of these players and coaches, this is their first fall without football in their entire lives. And so we went, we gave them the information, and then really more than anything else, just tried to answer questions, because it's going to create so many questions. And then from there, we kind of broke them into position groups, and spent some more time with those guys, and then really kind of spent the entire rest of the day individual meetings, one-on-one meetings. We had a parents meeting later that night at 6 p.m., met with every single parent on the roster, and gave the parents the exact same amount of information we could possibly give their kids, from what the next 3 or 4 months is going to look like, possible NCAA decisions, from housing to dining to, anything that you could imagine. And obviously there's a lot of parents with a lot of questions, scholarship and non-scholarship, and it was an unbelievably tough day. And I think the toughest part about it, again, when you're truly in this game to be a caretaker. I coach football to teach, to mentor, and compete, in that order. Those are the 3 things that I love to do. And when you're a caretaker, when you truly see these guys as your children, and you truly take on that responsibility of basically split parenthood, to go in there and give those guys news like that is heartbreaking, but at the same time, we got to find the positive. We got an unbelievably young football team. We're going to get a 13-week training cycle from the first day of school until they're sent home for Thanksgiving. And that's going to be huge in our development. So really just trying to get over the hump, allow those guys to grieve in whatever way possible it is they do. And then after that, sun came up, sun went down. Let's go prepare.
I want to talk about what's to come. But first, I think I'd like to give people some insight as to the procedures that you guys have had here on campus to stay safe. I feel like a lot of people sort of saw this news coming down the pike, and it was UConn, and then it's UMass, and then the MAC, and then UMass, and then obviously the Big Ten. What were the protocols that you and the administration have put in place to keep everybody safe here? And from the external view, it looked as though those protocols actually worked very well.
Yeah, and kind of in my statement that they asked, you guys asked me to put out. In my statement, that was a big part of that, was just how unbelievable, all the way from our chancellor, our administration has been, our athletic department has been, Dr. Core and the entire medical team, and Miss Ann at UHS. Everybody has been incredible, and just how much time that we invested starting back in April and May to make this thing truly as safe as we possibly could. And that manifested itself in our pod system, bringing 10, 12 guys back at a time. Show up, go to the visitors' locker room, last visitation with your family when you drop all your stuff off, which is unbelievably hard. Imagine being an 18-year-old freshman, knowing what a normal freshman goes through, and then add all this on top of it, And so, we tried to be there as much as we possibly could. And then so that from kind of dropping their stuff off at the visitors locker room, driven over, on a gator to UHS, immediately tested. I mean, when they show up to UHS, obviously everybody mask on, everybody, we're hand sanitizing like crazy. They immediately go in, take a test. Immediately from their testing, they're taken to the UMass hotel. They do not come out until they have a negative test result. Once they have a negative test result, then we were kind of allowed to move them to their final dorm part. Now, they were living in pods. So the pod, the 10 or 12 guys they came in with for really the first 2.5 to 3 weeks before we were allowed to kind of start slowly integrating to build up to kind of actual football, knowing that we're all going to have to be together at some point. Those 2 or 3 weeks, they're really in their pod, ate with their pod, trained with their pod, everything outdoors. I mean, just to get in the building alone. So after we get all the kids back, just to get in this building, it was every single day there's an app on your phone, basically your symptom sheet, which allows you to walk to the front door. When you get to the front door, temperature screening. Then to a pulse oximeter for anybody that had any kind of ever had a hiccup in terms of asthma or asthmatic, or is somebody that would keep an inhaler with the training staff at practice. So the pulse oximeter to measure oxygen saturation. Once you pass those, temperature screening or symptom sheet, temperature screen, pulse oximeter, then you're allowed to come in the door. Once you come in the door, hand sanitizer from finger to elbow, mask on at all times. So, and then the first 3 weeks, we didn't even come in the building. All the training was outside, way past socially distant. We're talking, 15, 20 feet in between people while still wearing a mask. And then as we graduated, all those same protocols transitioned to practice. And our kids did an unbelievable job. Yep. And then we were actually able to get in helmets. It was neck gaiter around your neck, spit shield, visor, helmet ever came off, mask went up. I can only imagine the amount of hand sanitizer that we used, because not only it changes your hydration systems, because you can't just go get water. So everybody has a gallon jug. Everybody had an initial travel jug. So, when the O-line goes from one corner to another corner, there's something waiting on them there. Your whole hydration systems were different. So you'd have hand sanitizer and water breaks in the middle of practice, disinfecting pads. And just the amount of effort that our administration, our university, our medical team, our athletic training staff, our strength and conditioning staff, and our operations staff put into keeping this kid safe, coupled with our kids doing an unbelievable job and being really responsible the other 12 hours of the day when they're not around us. It worked wonderfully. I think that data is really important, simply because I would really be interested to see, because hopefully this all goes away, and I'd be really interested to see 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now what that data across the country from every conference, from every football team, that would be really interesting to look at and hopefully would, help us moving forward.
That's a really interesting point. I hadn't thought of it that way. Okay, Coach, so here's the deal. I think maybe you made some headlines with your quote to The Athletic, and I know you don't care about comments on Twitter. I think this is a world that we live in that we all have to deal with, where people just fire off a knee-jerk reaction. But I wanted to give you some opportunity here to give your comment, maybe some context, or at least elaborate a little bit about what you said of why the cancellation of the football season hurt you as much as some of the deepest days that you've had in your past hurt you.
Yeah, and for me, obviously, I'm not immune to pain and suffering. No different than anybody else is. And to me, the biggest thing is obviously, I've had some dark days, as everybody has. I'm not immune. Everyone has problems. As a matter of fact, most are glad you have them. But everybody's got issues. Everybody's been through grief. Everybody's dealing with something. My problems are no greater than somebody else's problems. I think that's first and foremost. But for me, football, no football, I could care less. I really could. Whether we play now, whether we play in the spring, we play next fall. Obviously, I pray for our kids. That's not the case. But that wasn't the issue. When something deeply personal happens in your life, you deal with that. I had to deal with that. I went to work, I went home, I took care of my family in their time of need. You know, like that's much easier. The hard part, again, is when you truly feel like these players are your family. You know, like I don't take that lightly. Like my job as a human being, I've got two goals in my life. Help everybody that I encounter be better, okay, and be a better father than my father. Those are really my only two life goals, okay, as a human. And when it's very, very, very deeply personal to you that these are your kids, and you have to do everything in your power to help make their dreams come true, and do everything that you possibly can to make them as good as they can possibly be, academically, socially, athletically, spiritually. Like when that is who you are, the core of your being, and the only reason that you coach, when you've got to go tell, as opposed to, I deal with my personal issue, but when you've got to go hurt 100 to 110 18 to 21-year-olds that look to you to make things better, and you can't do that for them, like again, my goal is to help make their lives better in any way I possibly can. And athletics is a really small piece of that. But when you're not able to deliver on the promise that you've given those guys, that's miserable, because now it's not just your life, okay? It's our lives. That's 110 football players. That's 20 staff. That's parents for every one of those kids. I mean, you're talking the hopes and dreams, and now there's eligibility questions. And the reason why, me personally, why I equated it to what I've been through in my life and why I equated it to death is when my father passed away, the hardest part isn't he's not here. The hardest part is the indecision. How are we going to do this? How is this going to happen? What do I have to do? We got to sell all this. We got to move this house. We got to pack all this stuff up. And I mean, all the indecision that losing someone really close to you creates, that's exactly what this did, and probably at an even larger level for myself as a human being. You know, and so it was an absolutely brutal day. And more brutal than anything else has nothing to do with the football. Like, we play now, we play later. It's all about the players. We're going to do what's best for the players. Like, whatever's best for their health and safety, we're going to do that. But at the same time, when you take something away from them that is a large part of what makes them who they are, and you've got nothing to give them, that's brutal.
You know, I think hearing you talk, you just sparked thought in my mind about what I know about you. And when you mentioned family, I think a lot of people associate football guy in a silo where all he cares about is football. Clearly, you just said 100 things that would be counter to that. But when you talk about football, you're actually talking about family.
Yeah.
And we see that on your wall here. How has your family intertwined with your current football family?
Yeah, I mean, I don't meet my wife if it's not for football. You know, the best memories I have of my wife are around Maryland and Florida State football, knowing that both of those were really tough environments and tough times for me professionally. Every great memory I have of my father is based around football. Every great memory I have of my hometown and high school and the people that truly shaped me into who I am at the high school level is around football. My college coaches, I'm not sitting in this chair if it's not for Alec Robbins, my quarterback's coach at Middle Tennessee State University, okay? But every great relationship I have, all of my best friends, all of the kids, the former players, the guys that I call every couple of weeks and tell them I love them, that's all because of football, you know? And I'm a firm believer in this, that like as a head football coach, you know, the football takes care of itself. You know, and you heard me mention earlier, you know, like if your football field was your life, there's 4 areas of life where I have to do an incredible job. That's their academic career, that's their social life, that's their mental health and mental well-being, and their spiritual life. Because if you can do all 4 of those at a really high level, the football takes care of itself, okay? But If my social life's out of control, then I'm not going to probably be very good in school. And if I'm not good in school, Coach Bell won't let me play. Therefore, I don't have a great player. If my social life's out of control, but I'm smart enough to barely get by when I do make it to the football field, I won't be well slept, well fed, well hydrated, and therefore I'm probably not a very good football player. My social life's out of control, I'm barely making it in school, and every single day I come out on the football field, I'm not as good as I can be because I'm not well slept, well fed, well hydrated. Then I start to have an erosion of confidence. And my mental health starts to suffer because what's made me me, and a large part of the reason that I'm in collegiate athletics is because of my skill, and all of a sudden that's not there anymore. Then we have mental health issues. You repeat that cycle of a bad social life, a bad academic life. Every day I go on the football field, I'm not my best, therefore I start to lose confidence in myself. And then eventually you repeat that cycle long enough, when you look in your mirror and you look at your higher power, whoever that may be, that's when we start to lose our kids. And so for me as a head football coach, if you can make sure their social life's in order, then they're going to be better academically. Because they're better academically, when they come into football meetings, they're going to learn better. Because of that, they're going to have more confidence because they're well slept and well fed, well hydrated. They learn well. They're going to play better football. Because of that, they're going to feel better about themselves and their relationships. And then because of that, they're going to eventually have a chance to go be the best version of themselves they can be in the eyes of their higher power. And so for me, it's about those four things outside the white lines. The football takes care of itself. It's a lot easier to play cover two when I'm in control of my social life. I'm where I'm supposed to be academically. I've got great self-confidence derived off of those things that I mentioned before. And so like to me, so much of this is about their life. And who cares about your life? Your family. And so for me, that's a huge part of this program.
We're in a very interesting place right now because as programs cancel their season or postpone to the spring, the spotlight turns on you guys internally to say, how do you get bigger? How do you get better? How do you get faster? How do you get stronger? How do you use this time to develop your guys and keep them engaged, which I think is going to be one of the biggest issues that people do.
Absolutely, and here at UMass, our administration's been incredible. We're going to be allowed to keep the majority of our scholarship athletes here. And for us, from August 24th till basically the week before Thanksgiving, because that Thanksgiving week will probably be some transitions and guys coming and going. That's a 13-week training cycle. That's a long time. The longest training cycle you'll typically get in the spring is 8 weeks, depending on where your spring football is. We push ours back. The longest you typically get in the summer is anywhere from 8 to 10 weeks, depending on the calendar year. So 13 weeks is a long time. Now, the positive for us is, I've got an unbelievable strength coach, and Matt Shadid is unbelievable with our kids. We've got the number one on-campus dining in the country, and even in the middle of a pandemic, that's an unbelievable opportunity for our guys to eat and grow. Number three, we've got a brand new bubble, a brand new indoor facility where no matter the weather, we can train. So we've got everything we need. Also, we're a really young football team. And that 13 weeks is going to be a huge training cycle to get those guys kind of ramped up to looking like sophomores when they're really only freshmen. So it's a huge positive for us. I think to really answer your second question is that's going to be the challenge. The challenge is going to be 13 weeks, and by the time you're at week 8, you're at week 9, which is typically, in terms of their body rhythm, hey, we should be getting ready for football, whether it's your typical spring practice, whether it's fall in a season. That's going to be the challenge, keeping it fun, keeping it engaging, not letting their routine become routine, and really trying to eliminate monotony. And so especially with less people on campus, and so that will be a great challenge, but it'll also be a great opportunity for us as a football staff, outside of the lifting and outside of the NCAA allowed football activities, how much can we do to come closer as a team, and really build relationships that last.
I was going to mention Coach Shadid, but you already did. So let me ask you this. I've seen some of the trademark Walt Bell explosions on Twitter for the next recruiting cycle. How have you and your staff, Coach Bills and company, been able to use this pandemic space that we're in to engage with kids in the recruiting cycle? Because clearly that's been obviously one of the most important things for you guys over your tenure here, and it's going to continue to be one of the most important things.
You have 3 functions as a football coach: recruit, develop, and coach.
And wear
cool
T-shirts.
Yeah, in that order. And, for us, I mean, you got to understand, not only did we from March 13th till whenever we came back, June 22nd, June 25th, can't necessarily remember, but the high school players, the prospects, also had that time off. And so really what it allowed you to do, because they weren't in class, it really gave you more time in the day to build relationships, more Zooms, more FaceTimes, being more creative. I mean, we played unbelievable amounts of like online streaming video games. We played more Call of Duty than probably any staff in the country with those guys.
Who's the best Call of Duty staffer?
On staff?
Yeah.
Probably Coach June.
No.
Yeah, Coach June, Coach Bills. Now on our football team,
yeah.
we're pretty good. Like if we had a Call of Duty like UMass football team, like we'd be pretty good. Chinadu Agbana's unbelievable. Josiah Johnson's unbelievable. Aaron Beckwith, the new freshman defensive lineman,
yeah.
He's unbelievable. So, but again, it honestly allowed you to build better relationships simply because there wasn't much for them to do. I mean, how much time we spent on Zoom with parents and prospects, virtual tours, it made you be more creative. But we were able to do it all. I mean, every single time we got in touch with a kid, you were able, academics, campus life, the buildings, tours. I mean, you were able to do everything, just obviously in a little bit different environment.
Last question for you. Who's going to play quarterback in the spring? I'm kidding. I know you have a long way to go.
Well,
what
we had 12.
What excites you about when the first game starts?
I have no idea. And it's kind of where we are right now. Even within, FBS football, there isn't really any solidarity or any real answers that anybody knows. Obviously, the ACC and the SEC and the Big 12, they're going to push ahead. They're going to make somebody stop them.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to use, every possible opportunity to see where this thing goes. And then we've got half of college football that's chosen to not play. So there's an incredible amount of indecision. The one thing I will say is just all the momentum you can get out of the Big Ten right now, talking about spring football and when they're going to do this and when they're going to do that and how they're going to make it safer, in terms of the practices and padded practices and actually reducing padded practices while still playing anywhere from 16 to 20 games over a calendar year. That type of momentum is really reassuring, for UMass, because if those guys are going to do it, that's going to become an FCS plan. So now you got, 50, 60, 70, if not all of us playing in the spring, plus the FCS. We've got a great athletic director who does an unbelievable job in terms of scheduling and negotiating game contracts. And so I feel really good about the possibility of a season in the spring. It's just the execution, the details. And I think, unfortunately, we're probably pretty far away from really getting that thing hammered down, in terms of the eligibility piece, the countable athletic related hours piece, the what are we going to be allowed to do piece, when does camp start piece. I mean, there's so much to it that I think that's going to take longer than will be comfortable for some people, but they'll get there.
Coach, thanks. I'm glad to see your hair is looking phenomenal as it was a year ago. Right?
Okay. I just hope that I have it. My dad at my age had a lot of hair. And then, as he got to the 40s, there wasn't any left. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not, give me a couple years,
okay.
especially with no football.
Thanks,
yeah.
Coach.
But I appreciate it. Thank you, Jay.